Happy Sunday, everybody. I know the intro is different. I get it. But I'll explain all that someday. I need this session today because come tomorrow, um, the content of the Savage Patriots is going to drain me. I want people to be aware of that. So today, I really do need. I need it like you wouldn't believe, because I just finished brainstorming with the boys, and wow. So I want to get that out there because this might people might think this is for y'all. This is tonight is for me. This one's for me. This one's for me. And secondly, um, we're covering this particular one passage in preparation for tomorrow. And people may not think the two are linked, but they really are. Um, and I'll explain tomorrow how they're linked, but they're linked. Outside of the fact that they both involve God, but they're linked. But today we're going to be talking about Isaiah 53. And as usual, we'll read it all the way through and go from there. So, welcome, everybody. Give you time to settle in. I know the conversations between you guys were jumping, so that's good. We're going to get into Isaiah 53. Um, I've had conversations with people before about Isaiah 53, and the people that do not agree that the passage is about Jesus. I've even heard, well, the people who don't believe it's about Jesus have their reasons for doing so, and much of their reason is that it's about Israel. That's what they'll tell you. They have never been able to tell me how they think it's about Israel, but they believe it's about Israel, not about Jesus, because they don't want to believe that it's about Jesus. So we're going to read it, and we're going to do some similarity comparison to what is said versus what has been accomplished in the person of Jesus. Okay. Okay, good. So let's read. Who has believed our report, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him as a tender plant, as a root out of dry ground. He has no form of or comeliness. When we see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. All we, like sheep, have gone astray. We have turned each one to his own way, and the Lord has laid upon him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, he did not open his mouth. For he was taken from prison and from judgment. And who will declare his generation? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgressions of my people he was stricken. And they made his grave with the wicked, with the rich in his death, because he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him, to put him to grief. When you make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed, he shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. He shall see the labor of his soul and be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant shall justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore, I will divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors. And he bore the sin of many and made intercession for the transgressors. Now, I'm not, like I said, going to go into the counter arguments about who this is and why that is. I'm going to go at it from what I know it to be. This is about Jesus. Okay. So we're going to take this piece by piece and just kind of flesh it out, break it out, kind of make it make a little bit more sense to people. And I'm also going to give you things that it's spoken to me about. Okay. I want to start with this section here. He grew up before him as a tender plant and as a root out of dry ground. He had no form or comeliness, and when we see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. Now, there are two ways to take that. One of the ways you can take that is that Jesus was not a very handsome man. That's one way you can look at it. I've heard people say that, oh, it was because he had, he was an unshapely man and he had features that you couldn't really appeal to. I don't believe that that is what it was. I don't believe that. I do believe, however, that because of his stance when it came to God versus law, it was not the most appealing thing to people. Um, I could understand maybe that your viewpoint about it being um, about his looks, possibly even about the way he might have been carrying himself. Don't know. It doesn't say. Um, but that statement of there is no beauty that we should desire him, he was despised and rejected by men. You have to then consider what was the standard that they would consider beauty. I don't know that you can say that it was looks that would have drawn you to Jesus. But we do know he was rejected for his stance. We know that 100% that he was rejected because of what he was and who he was and how he was. So whether to me, whether he was good looking or not, the statement still stands that not many people accepted Jesus. Period. Whether that be on a surface area or it be deeper, they did not. They rejected him. He was a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. The other aspect of it that I've heard people say is that this was him on the cross. This particular statement was after the beating, and this was when he was coming um, after his ministry and the destruction happened and all of this beating and the blood and the whipping and the carrying of the cross, his disfigured face, all that. That's I've heard some people say that's what they were talking about. And we hid our face from him because of how grotesque he looked at the time of his crucifixion. But I think it's a lot deeper than that. I think many people hid from Jesus because he could see into them. They wanted to hide because of what he saw. They hid their face and they despised what he could see in them. They despised the fact that he could see past all their facade, past the fronting, past the image that they put forward to people. I think it's more than just a superficial surface humanistic thing. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, and he was bruised for our iniquities. When you read this particular portion right here, a lot of I'll tell you from my perspective, when I was a younger person in church, I can't say I was a believer. I went to church and I think I had a measure of Christianity, but I was more into churchianity than I was into Christianity. And even in that, reading this particular portion of scripture, it made me angry at times because I didn't fully understand who I was. The reason this particular portion angered me was because I never saw me. I always thought that I wasn't that bad. In in the grand scheme of things, I wasn't as bad. So why would God afflict his son and like this and have him bear griefs and carry sorrows and be smitten by God? Why would that happen for me if I'm not that bad? I'm not like so and so. I didn't do this and that. So why would I have to accept that Jesus needs to go through this? For me, it must be for somebody else. And for that, I'm upset because why? Why? He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was upon him. Again, when you read this, if you read this passage thinking of yourself as being okay, not that bad, not like somebody else, you're going to be mad at the crucifixion. And you would not think that his stripes are what was needed to heal you because you're not that bad. Unfortunately, I think we're there now in today's world. Nobody is that bad. You keep hearing atheists ask the question, why would God do that to his son? Because that was the punishment we were due. This happened to him because it was the punishment we were supposed to get. We were supposed to be shunned. We were supposed to carry all of our crap. We were supposed to be rejected. We were supposed to be cast aside. We were supposed to be wounded. We were supposed to be having stripes, stricken, smitten, afflicted. That was supposed to be us. But we did not, at least me, I'll say for me, I did not see myself as worthy of that punishment. I saw myself as worthy of maybe a punishment, like a little bit of a chastisement or calling me on my wrong or but I was 100% due forgiveness though for whatever it might have done. I definitely was owed forgiveness if I just said I'm sorry, I'm not as good as I was. This passage upsets people who do not see themselves as being the reason that Jesus went through what he went through. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned each one to his own way, and the Lord has laid upon him the iniquity of us all. When I read this first, like I'll keep mentioning myself because I don't want to speak on behalf of nobody else. But I do understand that for me, I was on the side of this passage that I was not that bad. And it tainted everything I read about Isaiah 53. When you are a sheep and there is a action done by you that harms the shepherd, most sheep don't care. There are some sheep that will though, but some sheep don't, and they go do their own thing and they don't care if what their actions did harm the shepherd. Take for instance the sheep that took off and ran into the bramble bush, right? Wouldn't care if the shepherd has to get his hands cut by thorns, if he has to run to find him, fight off a wolf, fight off some sort of animal. Just rescue me. There are tons of sheep that just want to be rescued. You get put right back in the flock and then you take off again. And you expect the shepherd to come get you. And the shepherd does because that's what the shepherd does. But the other side to that is an obedient sheep. There are sheep that will never leave the flock and run off. But until you realize that each of us have been that sheep that took off and did our own thing, we will never understand why the punishment fell to the shepherd. You're never going to, because you don't think that you've done anything as egregious to the shepherd. You just see yourself as in problem. The shepherd needs to save you. You don't realize that the scars on the shepherd's hands, the tiredness in the shepherd's body, the beating that it might have taken from poachers or from animals trying to save you was your fault. You don't realize that because you don't care. The shepherd's job is to protect me, and that's all that matters. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. The reference there is, of course, to when he was before Pilate. And if you remember carefully, he didn't say a whole lot to anybody. He was very quiet, stood there while they said what they had to say. It was a fulfilled prophecy. That's all that was, a fulfilled prophecy to show you who he was. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, he did not open his mouth. He didn't. He took something for us that he should not have had to take because he was guiltless. Guiltless. And he was taken, dragged around, paraded, beaten, thorns, led up, nailed, dropped, stabbed, taken down for something he never did. He was taken from prison and from judgment. And who will declare his generation? Our job. For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgressions of my people he was stricken. And they made his grave with the wicked. Now there is a differentiation here being made. They made his grave with the wicked, but with the rich at his death. Creating the grave, meaning his death, the process of his death was with the wicked, the two criminals on the cross. Do you understand the the depth of what took place? Do we really understand the depth of what took place? Like, I don't know that we really understand. I think a lot of us get to the happy part. He rose. And some of us even focus on the brutality of his death. And we use that emotionality of the brutality of his death as a replacement for our introspection of who we are and that we were the reason for it. You see, we take, like, I remember watching the Passion um when it first came out, and that scene of the flogging and the subsequent crucifixion had me in tears. Like, I was in my mind, I was broken. But when I really look back, I wasn't broken because I saw that I was the reason. I was simply broken because he went through it. The reason for me being mad or angry and hurt was not because I recognized that was supposed to be me. Saw it as he went through that for me. For me, not in place of, for. And it was a massive difference, that the word, the difference between for and in place of, totally different. That was for me. It's all for me, for my salvation, for my freedom, for me this, for me that. No, instead of is a big leap in your mindset if you realize it was because of instead of, not just for. But we love the idea of for us because it works. But it is more than just for you. It is because of you. It was because of me. My fault is what put him there. It's not just because he felt like saving me that he did that. That is part of it, yes. But the bigger issue is that that was supposed to be you. And instead of you, I'll take it. But don't ever get it twisted that for some sick reason, now all of a sudden, you are not as bad. You still have to come to the realization of the reason for that. The reason for that is because of your iniquity. It's really easy to say that he did it for. Really easy. Real easy. But it is way more than that. Way more. But it feels good to say for, because then we get the benefits. You realize you won't feel the real efficacy of that benefit if you don't realize the real reason for it. You're not going to. You never will. They made his grave with the wicked, but with the rich in his death. And remember, he was buried in the tomb of Joseph, Arimathea, because he had done no violence nor any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He has put him to grief when you make his soul an offering for sin. It pleased the Lord to bruise him. Why? This was the first question that popped in my head. Why is it pleasing to the Lord to bruise him? Because the Lord knew the end result. For those who would accept all of it, he knew the end result. For what the consequences are, the payment was worth it for the end result. He shall see his seed, he shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. We are supposed to be that seed. We should be the ones in his name prolonging his days here on earth. We are supposed to be the pleasure of the Lord prospering. But too many of the times we look at ourselves as the prize. You see how the flip happens with these preachers today? You are the goal. You're the apple of his eye. You're the reason. We do everything surrounding us. Everything about this passage mentions one very particular word, his. He will see his seed, not you. Even though you are the seed, it is not about you. It is about who the seed belongs to. He should prolong his days. Your only purpose is to make him famous, not you. And the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hands. Nothing you will ever do, nothing you will ever do will make anything prosper. Nothing. And part of this is we're not understanding who we are in this scheme. We don't. Part of us may see that we may kind of have an inclination of what it is, but we really don't. We don't. We think too highly of ourselves. And when you think too highly of yourself before coming to Christ, you don't fully come to him. You come to him thinking, I'm not that bad. I'll change a few things and we're done. Here's what happens when you change a few things and don't fully realize who you are. This is why you have people that will say they are, what you call them, born again sinners. Those are those people. They hang on to the old self in an effort to feel as though what they were is worth it. Because they still hold on to stuff. They keep the old things, they keep a habit, they keep it. Why? Because in some way, shape, and form, it is not bad enough to give it up. It is not, it's a sin, but it's a reoccurring one that I will have eventual time to get rid of. It's an overtime thing. In fact, I just had an argument with somebody in my inbox, and we'll go over this on Wednesday too, because I am going to make that entire email thread available for everyone to see, because I think it's important. There are lots of people that harp on this fact that Christians sin all the time, sin all the time, they sin all the time. And they will identify themselves as sinners. In fact, I will read one of the lines here that jumped out the most at me, because it was so crazy that it couldn't have been more obvious that the people that say this stuff are the ones that really have no desire to fully relinquish themselves to God, because they've already given themselves the answer that I'm already here, I can't help but sin, and I have forgiveness. Let me see if I find the right line here. Okay. I told you calling yourself not a sinner is a sin. Calling yourself not a sinner is a sin. I want you all to really analyze that thought. If you don't identify as something that God saved you from, that's a sin. However, identifying as a saved individual, living under grace and no longer sinning, that's bad. You have to view yourself as a sinner. This is part of this whole statement right here. We do not, we simply don't, and this is unfortunately for many, we do not fully accept his sacrifice. We don't. We don't fully understand or accept the sacrifice because we don't see the why of the sacrifice. We're not that bad. And if I am that bad, the one or two sins that I keep is normal because I am a sinner. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. He shall, not me, him. Therefore, I will divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors, and he bore the sin of many. He made intercession for the transgressors. This last line really used to get me kind of twisted. This one right here. He bore the sin of many. Many. I thought he died for all. How is it only many? That don't make no sense to me. And then one day, an epiphany hit me, if you want to call it an epiphany. Not all will accept it. While his sacrifice was for the sins of all, It was. You have to put it on him. You have to relinquish it. You have to place it there. You have to give your life up. That is why many, not all, because not all will do it. Not all will do that. Many might, but not all. Whilst Isaiah 53 is indeed about the life, the death, burial, and the purpose of Christ, the subsequent portion of Isaiah 53 is our acknowledgement of the reason for the sacrifice. Many of us do not want to face the fact that before we even enter into Christ, you have to realize that you are nowhere near him. You- You're not anywhere close. You ain't going to be able to get close. You're not there. You are the reason. He's not just the Jews that killed him. We love to say that the Jews put Christ to death. But why? Why was it even necessary? You, me. That's why. You want to know why people have lost reverence for Christ? You know why they have no reverence? They do not understand what they did to cause that. So why revere him? He did it for me, right? Yeah, he did it for me because he cares so much about me. You hear this a lot? God loves me, so he did that for me. There is no reverence to be given to God for that. You can give thanks. You will be grateful, yes. Reverence? No. You know why no reverence? Because there is no awe of what he did. The awe isn't there. The thanks, okay, we'll give him that. We'll give him thanks, and we'll say we'll praise him for the fact that he saw it fit to save me from whatever it was I was doing. We'll give money to the church because we need to help the poor or the widow or the orphans. We'll do all that stuff. So the church has now become superficial because we don't really see the need. We see the purpose on the side of my salvation, but we don't ever go and look at the reason for the cross as being us. Because we have already gone astray, each to his own way. You see, people like the individual in my inbox, it has become a measuring contest. And here's the craziest type of measuring. When you tell people, I no longer sin, they see it as I do nothing wrong. And in their world, that's impossible. But if I say to you that the blood of Christ continually cleanses me from all unrighteousness, which is in the book that they say they read, and I live there, where is the opportunity for sin? You tell me where the opportunity for sin is. And then, secondarily, tell me what is sin. Thirdly, why, if you are a Christian, do you brag about your consistency in sin to where you consider yourself a sinner? Where is the joy in expressing all of the time that I'm a sinner. Why brag about the thing that he died for to put to death as though it's your badge of honor in order for you to exemplify his death? Does that make any sense at all? Does that make any sense? That's like giving my wife a reason to forgive me because I enjoy the fact that she forgives me. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make sure I trespass against her so that she has a reason to forgive me. That's how I show that my wife loves me. How? Because I cross her all the time. Now, my love for her doesn't cause me to not cross her. No. In fact, my love for her makes me see that, A, I can cross her and I can be forgiven because that's how I normally am. What? So you don't make any effort to not? No. Why? Because she'll forgive me. So in other words, you're abusing. Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. Isaiah 53 is indeed about Christ, but when you look at it, you have to understand that Isaiah 53 is telling you directly to your face, you are the reason that he had to go through all of that. Every blow he took, your fault. Every gash, your fault. The cuts, the beatings, the carrying, the thorns, all of it, your fault. My fault. Our fault. Not his. And not because you're such a grand person, he did that. It's because you're a trash human being and he still did it. People have this illusion about sin because they don't fully understand salvation. People have an illusion about sin because they don't understand salvation. And because you've never really given yourself up, because you don't see yourself as that bad, you never fully embrace the truth of salvation. And God will always be a second fiddle, a crutch, an excuse, something you'd kind of do. You go to church, you tithe, you do all the things. You want to know why reverence is lost for God anymore? Because what are you revering him for? You didn't do anything that bad, so there's nothing to revere him for doing. It'd be like you go to court and you go to for the judge and you're in prison for a few days before your sentencing, and you come before the judge and you say, well, I don't know why I was what the verdict is for. I mean, I didn't do nothing that bad. Then the judge starts reading off your bill. Well, it says here you were drunk on this date, you got into a car, you drove 3 times over the legal limit of being drunk, you killed 15 people, then you went home, you slept, you got up the next morning, and you posted on your Facebook that last night was really fun, but I don't remember anything else after that. But we have you on camera leaving the establishment, watching you get into your car. Cameras all along the street caught you speeding. You clocked everybody. You went home. We didn't find you until the next morning. The bartender has proof that you had 15 shots. And when you are arrested, you're saying, well, I'm not drunk now. Why are you arresting me? But that was last night when I was drunk. Why are you holding me responsible for the drinking I did last night? You should have caught me then. But listen, Your Honor, look, but I was drunk. That wasn't me. That wasn't really me. That was the alcohol. Those people died, yes, and I'm sorry, but I didn't do the car I was driving may have hit them. These are excuses they'll give standing before the judge. And the judge says, you know what? Ironically, one of the family members of the people you killed came forward and they said they are going to take whatever legal punishment that was due to you on them. And you say to the judge, well, that makes sense because I'm not that bad of a guy. What do you mean? Well, if they want to take my punishment, I'm happy for it and I thank them for it. But in the grand scheme of things, that wasn't me. I was drunk, yeah, and maybe I should not have been drunk. But can you really blame me for what the alcohol did to my body? And then you go over to the person that is taking your punishment. You say, thank you so much for doing this for me, man. Like, I really appreciate this. I won't forget you. I will never forget what you did for me today. Then you walk out the courtroom, that person goes to jail, and you never think about that person again. But you're free. Person comes back after serving the time. Your slate is now clean, thanks to them. And they say, you remember me? And you'd be like, you look familiar. I was the guy that took your punishment in that court case where you killed my mom. Oh, yeah, man, how you doing? And this is how they're talking to him. How you doing? I'm glad to see that you're free now. Again, thanks, man. That was stand up of you. No mention of his mother. No mention of remorse for killing her. In fact, still blaming, man, that I'll never drink like that again, man. Good, good, you'll never drink like that again. But what about my mom? Do you realize that you did something? Like I said, man, that drinking thing, that was the reason, man. So I'm normally I'm not that bad. That's Christians now that don't see that they're the reason for the cross. We make all the excuses because it's not my reasoning. It's not my fault. I didn't do it. Something else was the reason. The car broke down. The car had brake problems. I was impaired, but it was because of the alcohol. You didn't say that you ingested 12 shots purposefully because you liked it, because you're an alcoholic. You would never admit to that. But then there's other people who leave the bar drunk. They do it. They kill 12 people. They go home. They get up the next morning and they say, man, I don't remember what happened last night. I don't even know how I got home. Cops come. We have a warrant for your arrest. Why? What happened? Then they show you all the footage, just like they did the other guy. But instead of saying the alcohol, they said, I I did that? And they say, yeah, you had 12 shots. You mean I killed somebody? 12 of them. And you sit there and you realize that you're trash. And you tell the judge, I need to die. For what I did, I should die. And the judge says, yeah, you should, because it's 12 counts of manslaughter. Then the person of one of the people that you killed comes forward and says, I will take his punishment. And you look over, and you're like, why? Because it makes no sense to perpetuate the issue. The judge accepts that guy's plea deal and says, okay, there you go. I'll send you instead of him. and the guy gets 15 years because he's not the punishment, but the guy gets 15 years, gets out, goes to see the guy that kills his mom. And the only thing that that guy can do is fall down and thank him and apologize and apologize and apologize and apologize and say, ever since that day, I stopped drinking. I stopped going to the bars. I did as much as I could for your family while you were gone. I did restitution, and I will never, ever, 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 ever be able to thank you enough for what you did, because I realized what you took was for me, and I was the one that screwed up royally, and everything that should have happened to me, I should have gotten. And I know you didn't do that because I was such a great person. You did that even though I was trash. And I harmed somebody that you loved. That's the difference between somebody who sees Isaiah 53 in purpose and somebody who sees the Isaiah 53 in effect. They'll take the effect, but they will ignore the purpose. They love the effect, love it. Purpose, not so much. Because in order to see the purpose, you have to admit that it was your fault. Effect, it might have been my fault, but I still thank him for the fact that I'm fine now. We, man, we have a very hard time. We have a hard time dealing with this. We have a hard time dealing with it because we're not that bad. Reverence for God is gone because we're not that bad. We're okay. We're okay. Even the sinner on the cross, that criminal, understood plain as day that he deserved to be there. You realize that? That he was going through the same punishment, and he understood, at least I am supposed to be here. He's not even supposed to be here. He's not even guilty of anything. I am. And because I know I'm guilty, Lord, please remember me. If nothing, just remember me. Just remember me. Can you imagine? I think I'm going to end with this particular thing here. Let me get it. Luke 23:39. Then one of the criminals who were hanged blasphemed him, saying, "If you are the Christ, save yourself and us." That criminal represents the kinds of people that don't see their own shame. Just save me. You're God, right? Save me. Just do it, save me. That is many. But the other answering rebuked him, saying, "Do you not even fear God, seeing you are under the same condemnation? And we indeed justify, for we receive the due reward of our deeds." We deserve this. What are you talking about, dude? But this man has done nothing wrong. Then he said to Jesus, Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. He didn't say, bring me in. He didn't say, I deserve to be in. He didn't say, just anoint me as one. He just said, remember. That's all I want you to do is remember me. Remember at least this, that I knew my position before and I knew that I deserved this. And please remember that I knew this. That's all I'm asking. Remember. And Jesus said to him, assuredly, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. That criminal knew who he was. He knew who Jesus was, and he understood the difference. The other criminal, he's in the same spot. Just save me. You up here with me, you might as well save me. You say you're God, save me. There is a marked difference. Never acknowledge that he's supposed to be there. Never acknowledge that he deserved it. Just save me. I can only hope that we're like this second. Acknowledge that you're not, because the consequence of the blood will not have its efficacy if you don't realize it. And you know what you'll perpetually live in? The fact that you're a sinner. Because that's how you identify. But not so much as to stop, just enough to identify. Just enough to identify. In either case, we'll be talking about Job tomorrow and his wife. And I'll tell you the reason I'm talking about Job. There was a joke that I heard that was really funny. Some people may not find it funny, but I found it hilarious because I ain't never thought about it like that. And this is a guy that he's a Christian comedian. And he said, what's up with Job's wife? He said, don't you find it kind of weird that Job lost everything, livestock, sons, daughters, houses, lost everything, but the wife didn't go nowhere? he said, can you imagine the devil? And somebody saying, man, what about Job's wife? Why you wouldn't take her? It's like, nah, I ain't taking her. She's doing exactly what I wanted to do. She's doing all the things I need her to do. I'm not taking her. Now I'm not messing with that one. Like, you funny. That's what I put her there for. I'm not removing her. And she curse God and die. So we'll be talking about that versus Proverbs 31. Okay, versus Proverbs 31. Because there is a marked difference. But if you also notice, we'll read to the end of Job about what was restored to him. Okay, what was restored to him. The email, my dear Carol, is right here. There be the email right there. In case you needed anyone else besides Carol, there's the email right there. Feel free to use it. I do appreciate you guys. I really do. Thank you for all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And like I said, this was more from me than y'all might know. This is more from me than you might know. Yeah. Hopefully you grab that email, straighttalkmb@outlook.com. Straighttalkmb@outlook.com. Scrolling at the bottom also are the options for assisting monetarily this channel. It is not a requirement to be here. It is not a requirement. I'm not asking you to do it. I'm giving you the option if it is something that you have already discussed with God to do. You have two options for it. Or inbox me at Straight Talk MB for any other ways that you might want to try. I am not going to limit anybody from doing something, but I'm also not going to beg you for anything either. I want to make that abundantly clear. So, options are at the bottom for anybody that wants it. Just know. Okay? Good. I don't want nobody telling me that I'm trying to beg. I don't do that. I barely ask at all. So, I was told before, and it was backed up later, that this is something I should at least open for, so that other people that are wanting to have an option for it. That's all that's for. It's an option. We will talk tomorrow. And remember, tomorrow's going to be a heavy day for me. I just want people to understand it's not like not heavy in terms of workload. The content tomorrow on both my platforms is going to be heavy. It's going to be heavy, real heavy, super heavy. So if you pray for anything, pray for strength underneath that weight, because it's going to be a lot. And when you see Savage Patriarchy, you'll understand what I mean. We'll catch up with you guys in the morning. I think that's about it. Yeah. Yes. Wisdom calls to you from the streets. So please, please, please find wisdom. Peace.
Hold tight the dreams, for if dreams die, rely on yourself in no way.